Okay, colleagues, we continue with our third session. I welcome on the podium the representatives of Microsoft, Google and Facebook. For your information, Apple has met with the LIBE delegation in Washington last week and sent correspondence to the chair of the committee on November 6th. Yahoo and Amazon have been invited as well. However, they both declined to take part in the hearing, and letters setting out their or stating their reasons have been published on the LIBE website, if I'm informed correctly. I don't think I'm going to do a long introduction because everybody here knows why we have invited representatives of industry. I'm going to ask our three guests, very welcome, to make a very short introductory statement of maximum 10 minutes. I'm going to invite you in the following order: Mrs. Belz, Mr. Lundblad, and Mr. Allan. Mr. Belz, you have the floor.
So, yes, thank you for inviting me to this hearing today. We appreciate the opportunity to be heard and to speak in front of the esteemed House. And we also think that a debate is the best way on the topic for the governments to advance, the discussion how to strike the balance between national security and privacy in the digital age, as this is urgently needed. And we also support and strive for reform where it is necessary. In my intervention, I would like to focus on three topics: Microsoft's practices in responding to data access requests from governments right now. Second, our practice in securing customer data and protecting our customer data against unwarranted access. And three, what can we do to ensure that EU citizens' data are safe anywhere in the world? So, before we talk about the practices, how we respond to the data access requests by public authorities in the US and elsewhere, I wanted to give a little bit an overview what role we as Microsoft, as a company, play through our services and products. So the volume and the complexity of information of the data that has been closed, I think, has been raised some, confusion. So I think there is a common interest, and you are striving for this, that we establish a good understanding of the facts, which then will allow us to find the right solutions. So Microsoft, I hope, is known to everybody, offering a wide range of services, software and devices. So in Windows and Office, we today offer as on-premise solution, but also in the cloud, which means through a service offering. And we offer consumer-facing products like Outlook.com, Xbox, mobile technologies, search, other online tools, and most recently we have been moving into the devices business with Surface. And we acquired, last but not least, in November 2011, Skype, which is also in the middle of the debate. When offering our services to our customers, like Hotmail or Office 365, the data of our customers are hosted on our server farms. In that scenario, we handle government data access requests, and we take steps to protect our server infrastructure against any unwarranted access. Information exchange with customers is delivered through public service providers, so we don't own networks. To protect customers' data on consumer data during the transportation, we offer a set of different protection solutions which can include encryption. Most of our customers still today license and use our software on-premise, so on their own servers or service providers. They or their service providers control the access to their data, and we help our customers to protect themselves against unwarranted access through constant security updates and cybercrime initiatives like takedown of botnets. So how do we handle data access requests? Microsoft only discloses customer data in response to valid legal orders, and this is applicable for all countries in the world where we do business. Except in most limited circumstances, US law generally prohibits the voluntary disclosure of customer data to a governmental entity. Microsoft does not provide any government in the world with direct or unfettered access to our customer data. And we do not support or give any technical details to any governments that they can get access to customer data not located on our servers. So we do not build backdoors into our products, and we do not provide any government with our encryption keys or help them break encryption. What is the process when we receive a concrete request? First, we are today not, for rules of law, permitted to confirm which kind of request we receive from secret services, and I hope you respect kind of that I'm keeping and obey here to the law. But what we can kind of explain in detail, and I'm happy also to deliver more, is how do we in general handle any law enforcement or secret service requests. So what are our processes in the company? So if we receive a request, we have a compliance team in the company which is reviewing the request, and they ensure that the requests are valid, and we reject those that are not, and make sure we only provide exactly the data specified in the order. Another important aspect, Microsoft only pulls and then provides the data, the specific data mandated by the relevant legal demand. So we do not give access to our server that somebody else can, look around what he or she needs or what the entity needs. We are doing the search and handing the data over. In June 2013, we were publishing information about the volume of law enforcement and national security orders served on Microsoft in an aggregate form. For the first time, we were permitted to include the total volume of national security orders, which may include FISA orders in this reporting. We are still not permitted to confirm whether we have received any FISA orders, but if we were to have received any, they would be included in our aggregate volumes. The data shows that for the 6 months ended in December 31st, 2012, Microsoft received between 6,000 and 7,000 criminal and national security warrants, subpoenas, and orders affecting between 31,000 and 32,000 consumer accounts from US governmental entities. This includes local, state, and federal requests. This is all on our webpage, so you can look there at the details of the numbers. To give you some ideas of the context of law enforcement requests, we have rejected and will continue to reject and resist government demands if there is a legal basis for us to do so. So, for example, during the first half of 2013, we have rejected 911, so equals 2.4% of requests for not meeting legal requirements. And in nearly 20% of the requests, no data we are looking for were found, so we didn't hand anything over. We only respond to requests for specific accounts and identifiers. We don't offer unfettered access to the data. While we are obliged to comply, we keep also track on the received orders and build a track record to ensure that they are valid and disclose only the data covered by the order. We always require law enforcement and entities and national security agencies to follow the laws, rules, and procedures for requesting customer data in criminal investigations. And we have gone as far as we can be to be transparent about compliance. Our law enforcement request reports set exactly out how we handle these type of requests. The second topic, how do we ensure security of our customer data? Microsoft takes a number of steps to secure customer data. These include technical and physical measures. Just to mention one, which is mentioned in the debate, is encryption as one solution, but we also offer, for example, for Outlook.com, extended validation certs that use a higher level of encryption. As we also learn a lot of information through the press today, we need to say that we are reviewing our own security policies and measures in the products to figure out if there are changes, technical changes to be made to improve the security of our customers and consumers. So my third topic is, what should we do to ensure that EU citizens' data are safe anywhere in the world? As I mentioned at the beginning, I think we need to first understand the facts, which is in this case, as we heard also during the session today, not as easy to figure out. And it will be important to find solutions to ensure that citizens' fundamental rights, like privacy, are protected with the same level in the digital world. At the same time, governments will need to protect their country's security and safety of citizens and have meaningful ways to fight cybercrime. How to draw the balance requires political decisions based on democratically legitimized processes. All governments today are requesting access to data. Viable solutions that mitigate the impact on user privacy have to consider the global nature of the Internet and thus be global. Last but not least, any solution will have to consider the profound impact which it could have on the development of an open and free Internet. Microsoft welcomes the initiative of the European Parliament to explore solutions to the current situation. As a multinational company, we comply with applicable laws in multiple countries. We have been seeing an increase in government interest in access to user data, as well as concerted effort by governments to protect against the disclosure of their citizens' data. Both of these developments have been intensifying. Juggling these competing demands has become complex and could have not only negative impact of the openness and the development of the Internet, but also to be to the detriment of the citizens. How to solve the situation? Our point of view is that we need more universally agreed rules and principles governing government access to customer data. To solve these problems, we think governments around the world should roll up their sleeves and forge new consensus-based rules of the road. These rules must ensure that all countries respect the privacy of all of our users, no matter where they are from or where they are located, and they must account for the global nature of our products and services. We need to make sure that this debate is open and informed so that the public can understand the nature and the scope of government access to customer data. We have filed a lawsuit in the US seeking the court's permission to publish more detailed information about any national security orders we may receive. We have also been strongly encouraging the US Congress to continue to pass a law allowing technology companies to disclose relevant information in an appropriate way. And I was pleased to hear this morning Congressman Sensenhauer, whom we are supporting in his proposals. We recognize that whilst more transparency is needed, also the system needs to change. Trust in cloud services can only be fully and permanently restored when governments change how they try to access data. As mentioned, data encryption is part of the solution, but it also requires thoughtful policy measures. We believe that territoriality is an important rule of law principle. Countries have sought to solve conflicts of law via mechanisms such as multi-legal assistance agreements. But also, let's face it, some countries have started to find ways to circumvent these agreements. So our ask is that to work through the agreements and try to figure out how to better collaborate instead to continue to work on circumventions. We also are supporting the European privacy rules, and we think that we need comprehensive privacy legislation in the US. I think there are privacy principles we can base ourselves on, but we need to gather, further advance them to come to more similar, coherent frame as we have today. The Council of Europe conventions like on cybercrime and 108 Data Protection Convention could be starting points to discuss this, because there, I think we have international agreements which can be the basis. Let me come to the end. So let me close, sorry. Microsoft remains committed to the respect of human rights, free expression and individual privacy. Therefore, we are looking forward to continue this dialogue, and we are committed to further engage to restore trust and confidence in the Internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I realized I forgot for the three speakers to mention your position. Mrs. Belz is Vice President Legal and Corporate Affairs, Microsoft for EMEA, that's Europe, Middle East and Africa. The next speaker, Mr. Lundblad, is Director of Public Policy and Government Relations for Google, and the final speaker, Mr. Allan, is Director EMEA Public Policy for Facebook. So I'm inviting Mr. Lundblad next for 10 minutes max, please.
Thank you. I would like to thank you for providing Google the opportunity to speak at this hearing today. My name is Niklas Lundblad. I'm a Director for Public Policy and Government Relations for Google, based in Stockholm. First, I want to take this opportunity to reiterate the public statements that the CEO and General Counsel of Google, Inc. have categorically and emphatically made with regard to accusations regarding U.S. government surveillance. The position is unequivocal. We have not given the U.S. government access to Google servers, not directly or via backdoor or a so-called Dropbox. Google refuses to participate in any program for national security or other reasons that requires it to provide the U.S. or any other government with access to its systems or to install their equipment on Google's networks. Top executives of Google Inc. have expressed their outrage at the lengths to which the government seems to have gone to intercept data from private fiber networks. These accusations have severely eroded user trust in the Internet, ultimately also in the information society, and they underscore the need for a serious and timely debate on reform. So we're very happy to be here today. Keeping user information safe and secure is our highest priority. Google strives to go above and beyond when it comes to security and protect our users in a variety of ways. For example, if it looks like there is suspicious behavior on a user's account at login, Google will notify the user over email and via a clear warning at the top of the user's Gmail page. Google also offers two-step verification to all account holders, a technical mechanism that requires that the user generate a unique code to log in addition to username and password. Equipping users with tools and information to stay safe online is just one example of many security efforts. Google has also led the way when it comes to encryption for users, which is a necessary and effective defense against all types of threats to systems, both from government and non-government sources. Google has encrypted connections to Gmail by default since 2010 and has supported secure connections in Gmail since its 2004 launch. Encrypted web search has been available since 2011. Last month in the Washington Post, Eric Gross, Vice President of Security and Privacy Engineering at Google, publicly announced that Google has accelerated a plan to enable end-to-end encryption of data traveling between data centers. This is something the company decided to do already in 2012 and announced in January 2013. Yet, providing extensive encryption isn't enough. Internet security is an arms race. Every advance in user protection creates a new challenge for sophisticated attackers trying to penetrate systems. Google needs to continuously invest and innovate in order to stay ahead and keep users safe and secure, which means expanding efforts beyond Google's own products and services. To do this, Google has undertaken large efforts to help reduce malware online, for example. In 2006, Google built a sophisticated system called Safe Browsing that detects and flags unsafe sites across the web. Google's Chrome browser and other companies' browsers that use this free Safe Browsing API, including Firefox and Safari, display a warning to users when they are about to visit a site that may be unsafe. Malware is a known mechanism used by malicious actors, including governments, to surreptitiously monitor user behavior or collect information. Google detects up to 10,000 malware and phishing sites per day and help protect about 1 billion users from these threats. In addition, Google has an ongoing partnership with Stop Badware, a group that offers resources for webmasters who want to keep their sites clean from malware. Finally, through an industry coalition called the Messaging, Malware and Mobile Anti-Abuse Working Group, Google has been instrumental in a joint effort with companies around the world to fight abuse and malware online. I would now like to take a few minutes to explain how Google Inc. deals with requests for user data from any government. The Google Inc. legal team handles each request on a case-by-case basis, reviewing each request independently. The team pushes back on the scope of these requests if they are too broad, and they challenge requests that do not follow the correct process. I should be here before you today with charts explaining how many requests Google Inc. receives from U.S. national security agencies. Google Inc. brought an action in federal court in the United States seeking a declaration that it has the right to publish such statistics about national security legal process. But the declaration has not been granted. Ensuring that companies can report statistics like this would facilitate an informed debate on how to balance users' rights to be free from unlawful government intrusion with the needs of the law enforcement and intelligence communities for legitimate purposes. This is why I would like to close by discussing the issue of transparency and the legal framework that currently exists for government requests to access EU citizens' data. Google has been a long-term advocate for and a leader in providing transparency about government requests for user data. The Google Inc. Transparency Report, which you can find at google.com/transparency report, shows a breakdown by country of government requests for user data. Google Inc. was the first company to launch such a tool back in 2010. Following the revelations this summer, Google requested authorization to publish statistics about receipts or requests made under certain national security laws. We're disappointed that the Department of Justice opposed our petition for greater transparency around FISA requests for user information. Openness in the process is necessary since no one can fully see what the government has presented to the court. Transparency is only the first step. Agreements like the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaties guarantee that standards for due process are met and offer a consistent framework for expedient mutual assistance in criminal investigations, for example. Where countries other than the country in which a company is headquartered require user data and it's legally justified, an MLAT can provide the right framework for law enforcement cooperation. But more can and should be done to significantly improve this process. We have been thinking about what such a reform could look like for years and would be delighted to follow up with this committee on issue reform. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to speak at this hearing, and I welcome any further questions you may have on the issue.
Thank you very much, also for being concise. And the final speaker on this panel, Mr. Richard Allan, on behalf of Facebook.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to follow Nicholas's lead on timing and warn the translators that I will skip the first 3 pages of the prepared statement we sent, so there's more time for questions, and start at the bottom of page 3, our data request policies and practices. The first bit just tells you how great we are, and I think you can read it on the website. So turning straight to Facebook's policies and practices on data disclosure. Facebook has also, and again this will be repetitive, developed well-established practices to help governmental authorities around the world submit data requests. These processes are described in guidelines that we've published publicly on our website. Law enforcement authorities in Europe and elsewhere around the world can submit requests for data in official investigations directly to Facebook through Facebook's law enforcement online request system at www.facebook.com/records. They can do it by fax, another technology that may go out of common usage, or by post to Facebook Ireland. To ensure that these processes are well understood, Facebook representatives have provided guidance and training for police officers in Europe, particularly those who focus on the internet and child safety. Facebook has stringent processes in place to handle all government data requests. Facebook believes this process protects the data of the people who use Facebook and requires all governments to meet a high legal bar. Facebook scrutinizes each request for legal sufficiency under its terms and under the strict letter of the law, and requires a detailed description of the legal and factual basis for the requests. Facebook pushes back when it finds legal deficiencies and fights many of these requests, and is often successful in narrowing the scope of overly broad or vague requests. In many cases, Facebook is required to share only very limited data about an account, such as basic subscriber information. Facebook is able to respond expeditiously to many European requests, including requests where there's an imminent risk of death or bodily harm. For example, we've worked with law enforcement authorities in child abduction cases to assist in locating the missing child. The activities of Facebook Ireland's law enforcement response team have been examined by the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner of Ireland during his audit of Facebook Ireland and his follow-up report of 21st of September 2012. During the September 2012 review, the Data Protection Commissioner found that all of the requests they examined met the conditions in the Irish Data Protection Acts. They also stated their view that, and I quote, Facebook Ireland is appropriately assessing requests and either seeking additional information or justification where it has concerns, or is refusing such requests, end quote. Turning now to the reports about government surveillance, it's certainly true that over the past several months there's been a great deal of media coverage and online and interest in the nature and extent of government requests from online providers in national security investigation, and how companies like Facebook respond to these requests. Much of this coverage has been inaccurate or misleading. Facebook has therefore taken a number of concrete steps to address these concerns. First, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder and CEO of Facebook, has forcefully and repeatedly rejected false reports that Facebook has somehow allowed direct or unfettered access by any government to Facebook data. As he stated the day after these news reports first surfaced, and I quote, "Facebook is not and has never been part of any program to give the US or any other government direct access to our servers. We have never received a blanket request or court order from any government agency asking for information or metadata in bulk, and if we did, we would fight it aggressively." End quote. Second, Facebook has released the maximum amount of information allowed by law concerning the government data requests it has received. In June, about a week after these reports and after intense negotiations with the US government, Facebook released a US government request report that included all US national security related requests, something no company had been permitted to do before that time. These numbers show the limited number of these data requests. For the 6 months ended December 31st, 2012, the total number of user data requests that Facebook received from any and all government agencies in the US, including local, state and federal, and including criminal and national security related requests, was between 9 and 10,000. These requests run the gamut of matters from things like a local sheriff trying to find a missing child, to a police department investigating an assault, to a national security official investigating a terrorist threat. The total number of user accounts for which data was requested pursuant to the entirety of those 9 to 10,000 requests was between 18 and 19,000 user accounts. In August, we supplemented our disclosures of US request data with a global government request report that provided information on the total number of requests for user data that Facebook had received from every country that submitted a data request in the first half of 2013. This report stated that the total number of US requests of all types was between 11 and 12,000, requesting information on between 20 and 21,000 accounts. And note that this US number includes any requests that have been made on behalf of third countries, including EU countries, through the mutual legal assistance treaty arrangements which Nicholas referred to. Through this MLAT process, a request is made to the US Department of Justice by the government of a country that is party to an MLAT arrangement and will be served on Facebook by a US court in a similar way to a US domestic request. And I agree with Nicholas that there's a lot we could do, I think, to improve the MLAT process. In addition, the report detailed the specific number of requests from each European country. The total number of requests that came directly from EU countries for this period was 8,500, and these requests targeted approximately 10,000 user accounts. With more than 1.2 billion active users worldwide, these reports demonstrate that a tiny fraction of 1% of Facebook user accounts was subject to any kind of government request in the past year. We believe that this helps put in perspective the numbers involved and lays to rest some of the hyperbolic and misleading assertions that we've seen about the frequency and scope of the data requests that Facebook receives. Third, Facebook, along with others in the industry, has been pushing the United States government for the ability to be even more transparent about government requests. In September, Facebook filed a legal action with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court in Washington, D.C., seeking authority to disclose at regular reporting intervals the total number of national security orders it has received, if any, the total number of user accounts specified in such orders, and the number of requests seeking the content of communications versus those seeking transactional subscriber information. While transparency is a crucial first step to an informed public debate, we believe that more needs to be done. In late October, Facebook joined several other providers, including those here, in publicly calling for government surveillance practices to be reformed, to include substantial enhancements to privacy protections and appropriate oversight and accountability mechanisms for those programs. Together with the other companies, we sent a letter that applauded Representative Sensenbrenner, who we heard from today, and his colleagues for the important contribution to the debate that their legislative proposal represents. Facebook will continue to be vigilant in protecting our users' data from unwarranted government requests and will continue to ask all governments to be as transparent as possible. We're very interested in the work of elected representatives around the world as they develop policy and legislation on access to internet data. We believe that we have a common goal in wanting there to be widespread public trust in the way in which governments create and use their powers in this sensitive area. In that spirit, we're happy to do what we can to help the European Parliament to bring its expertise to bear on these complex questions. I hope that this statement and my responses to any questions you have will help in that process.
Thank you very much. Okay, having listened to these three introductions, we'll now open the floor for questions and debate. I have the rapporteur and 2 shadows and 2 more requests for the floor. Anybody else wants to come in? No? Then, yes, Ms. Ludford. Okay, so we have 3 other members, and then I close the list. I propose that either you put your question to one of the speakers specifically. If not, then I'll ask all 3 speakers to respond, and I'll apply the same order as your introductions. Mr. Moraes.
Sophie, I think we got so much information, and I mean, we just saw Apple in Washington, so we now got the 3 big companies. I think it was information rich despite not reading your website. And I think what has happened here is that there's a kind of preemption. I mean, I think the key allegations that came from Snowden have, in a sense, been answered in your prepared statements. And I think the first thing to do is to just restate what those key allegations were, because clearly there is a denial which is inevitable, but I just want to go through those denials again and also ask some specific questions to the 3. I don't think there's many people taking the floor, so I'll just go through some of that just now. Could I just first of all ask a couple of specific questions to Ms. Belz of Microsoft, and thank all of you for coming, by the way. First of all, just to pick up on some of the technical things that you mentioned, so as not to lose them for the record. Did you say that, or can I ask you if Microsoft encrypts data between your data centres and Google doesn't do that? Could I just ask you that? Did you say that? Are you aware of that? And if the...
We'll take the answers afterwards.
And if you don't, is it prudent to do that? Because I think Google does do it, and I wanted to pick up on that. I want to just return to your statement, because in your statement you move very quickly onto the rules of the road, and you embrace what Congressman Sensenbrenner has said. But prior to that, prior to looking to the future, I just want to return to the fact that the reports that we've had in the inquiry up till now indicate that about 98% of PRISM production was alleged to have been based on Yahoo, Google and Microsoft reporting that NSA would have access to its chats and emails and Hotmail, Skype, partly because Microsoft had developed a surveillance capability to deal with the interception of those chats and email. I mean, what is your reaction to those allegations? I mean, you've simply, swept those allegations away today. What is your reaction to the allegations that procedures would use, for example, to grant the NSA direct access to your centres, and that you could pull the data from those centres, or you could push the data? Now, you've talked about warrants and subpoenas, but clearly the allegations talked about, bulk data. So, how can you close the gap between those allegations and what you've said today? The question to Mr. Lundblad, again, you're talking about user trust and reform, but I just wanted to ask you about the allegations in the Washington Post on the 30th of October. Again, the question about the access between servers and the allegations. Again, I just want to repeat those allegations, because I think, for the record, we just want to hear, what your reaction is to that. I mean, you've given a denial in your statement, but I think we need to know. And on Facebook, again, you're talking about Zuckerberg and a flat denial, but did he have security clearance to talk to the US government so that, you know, those press reports were very clear that he did have the access? And we need to know, again, you know, what your reaction is to that, rather than to go from this inquiry with us thinking that you are simply denying that there was any interaction between Facebook and the NSA at all, which we obviously feel, in the evidence we've taken in the inquiry up till now, you know, feels a little bit difficult to believe.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask the panelists to respond. Please be very concise, maximum 2 minutes each. Otherwise, we don't make it until 6:30. Mrs. Belz.
Yes, so let me give a try. Let me first start with the surveillance capability in PRISM. We only can confirm what I already confirmed and what also the General Counsel of Microsoft has been confirming. We don't know PRISM as a program. We have not participating in, and we do not give unfettered access to our data center. So if you then ask how this can be, you know, mapped to the allegations, I think that's why I made the remark, one needs to look at the whole ecosystem, because there are different ways how to get access to data, also to Microsoft servers or, you know, through the infrastructure. So we have a common interest to figure out how this has happened. Second, direct, and this is kind of, you know, already answering also the third question, direct access, as I also mentioned in my introductory statement, we do not give direct access to our server. We don't. We hand over the data, we pull them, and this is what I only can confirm, you know, what I have said before. On encryption, look, Microsoft is offering a number of services, a multitude of numbers. I cannot map you out what we all do with all the different, you know, how do we encrypt the different services. Generally, what I can say today is that the, you know, for server-to-server transportation is generally not encrypted. This is why we are currently reviewing our security system and to enhance, to avoid that interception into the communication can take place.
Thank you. Mr. Lundblad.
Thank you. Yes, as pertains to the Washington Post allegations, I would say that we are, as all systems in the information society, constantly in different ways under attack, which means that we're constantly evolving our systems of response. As Eric Gross, who I quoted in my intervention, says, it's an arms race, and that's why we're currently encrypting all of those different connections and all of those different networks. It is, however, not, you know, finished, or there's no point at which you can say you're done. It's an evolving work, and we will continue to find new ways and new security measures to ensure that we can secure our users' data.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allan.
So on the material that's been published, I mean, you know, we can read it and make educated guesses about what's going on. We, I think, as people who work in internet companies, are not privy to any more information about the inner workings of a government agency than anyone else. But it does seem clear when you read the material that it's talking about systems that are inside that agency, i.e. what they do once they've obtained the data, which I say is not something that we have any awareness of. What we do have awareness of is when they make the request to us for the data. And on that, I think we have been clear and unequivocal that, you know, we will publish as much information as we can about those requests. And we've been unequivocal in stating that those requests are targeted, backed up by lawful authority, they don't involve bulk data collection, and they don't involve direct access. You asked why our CEO made the statement. It was to be as definitive as we possibly could be. If anyone else had made the statement, people would have said, but, you know, there's something else going on. By having the CEO make that statement, we are trying to be as clear as we can that as a company, those are the only requests that we've seen, and that there is nothing else going on.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Albrecht.
Thank you very much. Also to be here. I will have some questions, and I would really like them to be answered, so perhaps you just note it down. But first of all, let me say that I'm very happy to have you here, and I'm happy about especially the comments by Ms. Belz on our privacy legislation to be put forward. I think we are welcoming very much if also the IT business is now seeing the value in it, and also the comprehensive legislation in the US. I think we are looking forward to it together, and that there's a protection for EU citizens and so, as well as for all other citizens when it comes to our rules. But when I listen to all your remarks, then I hear, especially from Mr. Lundblad and from Mr. Allan, the wording unwarranted access, and I think it's important to say to everybody in the outside world that this means that there could be other ways of access your data, and it could have happened that all their data have been compromised. You only answer in a way which is legally saying that there's no unwarranted access. But what your answer didn't answer is my first question. Which jurisdiction do you mean by referring to unwarranted? Which is the jurisdiction which you are following when, for example, you are processing EU citizens' personal data? Can you 100% exclude that you are breaching EU or EU member states' rules when processing EU citizens' personal data? And how to deal with the fact that authorities attack your systems? Did you request authorities in EU member states to investigate on possible infringements to cybercrime rules, so to cybersecurity of your servers? Do you investigate on your own on these attacks, possible attacks? Those are questions which I think are very important to EU citizens, and I would like to have very detailed answers to that, and especially the first question with regard to the jurisdiction, of course, also what is about the cloud? Are there different ways how to judge about the jurisdiction? I think those are very important questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The three panelists, please. Mrs. Belz.
Yes, Mr. Albrecht, spot on which restriction to apply. And that's, if I have a wish, would be good if we could get some conflict of interest out of our way, because in fact this is in the new world not anymore as clear. And therefore we try our best to be compliant to all the laws. As long as they are compliant, it's fine. Once they are conflicting, then we are in trouble, to make it very, bluntly. This related to now very concrete how we apply the rules. If the data are on the server in the US, we certainly follow the US rule diligently, as we have been answering to that. And if the data are on, in Ireland, we are following those rules. So until today, luckily, I would say we haven't had any difficulties in following and applying to the rules. But going forward, and also referring to your EU privacy regulation, this famous Article 43 would bring us exactly into a conflict which we cannot solve. So my request would be to continue the conversation on that intended rule, because it will not solve the topic. It will just bring us into a conflict which we then cannot follow up on. Second, with regard to attacks on our servers, it's very simple. Whoever is driving an attack against our server is trying to harm and infringe our protection. So we have been able to build out quite sophisticated cybercrime mechanisms and activities, because it's, believe it or not, more the real criminals, the organized crime, who tries to get access to our server than anybody else. And there we are constantly looking into it and working it, and we have, built out a huge system where we are working on it, and also, collaborating through CERTs to work with, also government institutions to help fight cybercrime.
Thank you, Mr. Lundblad.
Thank you. In terms of jurisdiction, I think Dorothy hit it nail on. It's a conflict of laws that we would like to come out of. We would like to have clarity because in a very large extent this is a government-to-government issue and these rules need to be clarified at that very level. For many purposes, if you're headquartered in the US, then US law applies, but there are many different shades and nuances to that argument, which means that you actually would welcome, if you're in Google's position, the kind of clarity that you're seeking. I also think that is where you have to start. You asked a specific question about cloud as well, and I think that once you start clarifying the government-to-government agreements on this issue, much else will follow from that clarification. On the second point, I would also echo Dorothy. We have several teams that investigate possible attacks on our systems. We do that because we need to strengthen those systems. We need to make sure that they can become more resilient and more responsive to other types of attack. Knowing whether or not they are from certain attackers is a very tricky business. We concentrate on trying to protect the users by finding new patterns of attack and protecting against those, and trying to become smarter in this ever-ongoing arms race against people who try to penetrate the systems.
Mr. Allan?
I mean, I'd echo the comments from colleagues and just sort of reflect on one aspect of the jurisdictional debate. Again, we have multiple responsibilities. We have responsibilities in the United States where the infrastructure is. We have responsibilities in Ireland because Facebook Ireland is the data controller for users outside the United States and Canada. And we may have responsibilities directly in the country that is issuing the request for data, where they can be quite demanding and be quite assertive about their own jurisdiction. And we spend a lot of time trying to juggle all those responsibilities and not break anyone's law. So to the extent that those can be harmonized, that would be great. And just in framing that, which I know you're doing as policymakers, one thing that we would caution around is not letting the edge case, the extreme case, condition too much the general case, by which I mean, we're obviously dealing with a very extreme debate in terms of people talking about mass data requests, national security requests. The typical request we get is straightforward crime. And there, investigators in France are trying to catch somebody in Germany who's done something criminal to that individual in France, or between the Netherlands and Sweden, whatever it is. Those kind of cases, the investigators, again, do want that system to be reasonably friction-free. So whatever we end up with, we want a system where those regular criminal investigations that may be cross-border these days in the age of the internet can proceed whilst having appropriate checks and balances that deal with the kind of excesses I think you and your colleagues are concerned about.
Okay, thank you. Then I will speak on behalf of the...
Sophie, can I perhaps just catch up with one small thing? Because you didn't answer if you asked one EU member state law enforcement authority with regard to the possibility of an infringement of your service by cyber attacks, which is an obvious allegation. Perhaps one of you just, I would be interested how that works.
Okay, Mr. Allan?
I mean, we have done. So I have been involved myself in a hacking case where we identified that the individual who was trying to break into our systems was based in the United Kingdom. We absolutely reported it to UK law enforcement and worked with them to prosecute the individual. That's how we would react. Yeah.
Okay, then I'll speak as shadow of the ALDE group before coming to the other members. I have to say, I'm grateful that you came here, but let's face it, these are all carefully prepared legal statements. And I think Jan Albrecht made it very clear that, it reminds me very much, and I've made the joke before, of the statement by President Clinton on the Levinsky case, when he said, I didn't have sexual intercourse with that woman, which was legally correct. Relations. Oh, see, I shouldn't be a lawyer.
That was relations, not intercourse, for the record.
Oh, okay, well, sexual relations, which was legally correct, but had no bearing on the truth. And we're not lawyers. We want to hear the truth. This is about accountability to European citizens. And even if you would want to tell the truth, and I have to say that, and I don't hold this against you personally, but the businesses that you represent, I'm really moved by your, strong desire to come clean and your fight for transparency. But it's kind of late. because I've been talking to representatives of your firms for many, many years, and off record, I've heard things, that I found particularly shocking, but nobody ever wanted to go on record. So if I listen to your statements here today, it's like listening to civil liberties associations, but we're talking about companies who've been cooperating with governments under pressure. Yes, I recognize that, under pressure, but nevertheless, and there is a conflict of jurisdiction, and sometimes it's difficult to solve, but I can understand that if who was it? Was it the CEO of Yahoo who said, if I say what I want to say, I may end up in prison for 35 years. But if you comply with US law, at the same time you violate EU law. And if I were a company, I'd also rather pick a fight with the European Commission than with the US administration. It's very evident, but in the end, we have to fight for the interest of our citizens, your users, and you mentioned the word trust. Well, can you blame the users for not trusting companies anymore? Okay, a few questions. Encryption, yeah, great, encryption. But in one of our previous sessions, we've heard that even the companies which are, let's say, certifying encryption standards may have been corrupted by the US government. So how much value can we attach to encryption standards? I don't know. You can tell me that my data have been encrypted. I don't know what that means. You say that you don't allow for any backdoors. Well, I don't know, because the US government seems to be able to create backdoors, and maybe there are backdoors and you're not allowed to tell me under US law. I don't know. So how much trust can we attach to that? Then another element here is we hear stories in the media about payment, not just covering the costs for compliance, but actual payment. Have your companies, can you say on record here that your companies have not received a penny beyond the actual costs for compliance? And then would your companies be willing to provide this committee with an overview of government business orders that you have received? Because of course there is also another interest, beyond direct payments, and that you might resume under the motto, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I can think of at least one company sitting on this podium which has extensive business orders in the defense sector. And there is nothing shameful about that, but I think it would be useful to make it very transparent, now that we all want transparency, where the business interests lie. And then one final question. How do you feel about safe harbor? Do you have the feeling that that provides any kind of security to your users in this respect? Okay, those were my questions. I'm going to ask the panelists to respond in the usual order. Mrs. Belz.
Yes, so I try to be short. Look, whilst I understand your frustration, I don't think that you can expect from companies to make statements infringing laws and bringing the CEO into jail.
But sorry to interrupt you. Sometimes, you may be compelled to keep quiet by US law, but we are in Europe. In Europe, you're supposed to report this kind of infringement. So it may well be that in complying with US law, you're actually breaking EU law.
Maybe you let me kind of finish on the topic, because I think then kind of we can have clarity. So, look, as we have been mentioning, we are all in favor of giving more transparency, because that, I think, would allow a much better and much, on facts-based conversation. The difficulty we have is that we are not allowed to talk, because this is not allowed by US law. And by the way, there are a number of laws here in Europe who do exactly the same. So, and we follow the rules, and we are supposed to follow the rules. And I don't think that you should blame me or someone that we are not following the rules. The second question you have been asking is, by that what we are doing, but what we are not telling, are we infringing European rules? And this is another completely different question. And there I can tell you I'm not aware of that we have been infringing any rules as of today. So now you see exactly the difficulty we are in, because there are allegations, and we have difficulties to handle these allegations. But my ask is, don't make quick conclusions about what really is happening or not. And this has nothing to do with be on the scene or behind the scene. Let me go to the backdoors and the payment. So as I mentioned, we do not have backdoors. And as you can imagine, we are offering our products to the defense industry. We are offering our products to governments with sensitive data handling. We are very well aware that our customers are very concerned exactly about this backdoor. So therefore, we have since a number of years a program which is called GSP, which allows governments to have a very detailed look into our technology, including the source code and all these kind of elements to give them comfort that kind of they can see if there is a backdoor or not. This has been for us a very good kind of mechanism to give the insurance, but also there please understand that we do not and we cannot make public our business secrets, and that we need to do this in closer in closer groups and with a government, with an agreement which protects also our business interest. Payments. And this is also nothing which is different, in the US in many other countries. If there is a search, this requires sometimes a lot of, and I'm talking now independent law enforcement, and if there were Secret Service requests, you need to pull the data together. This requires quite a lot of, this costs. So we are getting the costs, not more and not less. And I think this is only, even beneficial to the whole system, because the more authorities need to pay, the more they think about if they really would like to collect the data. And if you think that we are, as a company around the world, we're getting many requests, I think it's not nothing, there should be no conclusion that because we are getting our costs paid, that we are doing something wrong. And on safe harbor, look, we are adhering to safe harbor, we are applying to safe harbor. Can safe harbor be improved? Yes, certainly we can discuss. Maybe one aspect, I would like to add, we are adhering to safe harbor on the consumer side because this is the vehicle today to get the data transferred between the US and Europe. On the business side, for our business customers, we are implementing the model clauses. So we are fully compliant with the privacy rules here in Europe, and we have even the confirmation from the privacy authorities that we are doing it. So I think there is not so much more, we can give as evidence, and, one should also respect kind of that then the limits might not be something, wrongdoing, but it is just a limitation we are, obliged to follow.
Mr. Lundblad.
Thank you. We actually have a long history of doing things before now. Back in 2006, we were one of the first companies to push back at the Department of Justice when they made their first overbroad request for search queries, in a case that got a lot of attention in the US, but perhaps not on this side of the Atlantic. We pushed back then, and we have continued to push back ever since, because we do believe that it's important that government requests are limited, that they're purposefully designed, that they're actually fit for the purpose for which they're made. We started publishing our transparency report in 2010, way before any of this happened, because we felt that it was an important move for us as a company to make sure that citizens could make informed decisions about the means and measures taken to secure the open society by governments, and so that citizens could discuss those means and see if they were relevant and proportional to the purposes envisioned. In terms of trust, I think that there is a dual trust question here. Of course, the Internet and the information society at large is losing trust. But I think a lot of citizens also are looking at their governments and asking if they can trust them, given that they don't necessarily have the transparency into what has been happening that they should have had. That they should have had, which is why we're pushing for reform in the US, and we would love to see reform in other countries and in the European Union as well, as goes to government transparency reporting. A simple, basic step of disclosing how many requests are made, on what basis, in aggregate numbers or any other numbers that are compliant with national security, in order to make sure that citizens can make informed decisions. We're here today to cooperate and to participate in this debate, and we're going to continue doing that because we believe it's important. This is not for show, this is important for us. And I think that in terms of backdoors and the question of remuneration, I would just echo what Dorothy said. There are no backdoors, and we have not received any remuneration for surveillance measures. Safe harbor can certainly be reformed. It can certainly be improved. It can certainly be tailored to the needs that we now see. There's a national security carve-out in there that one would need to examine more closely, for example. And I think that the important thing with that question is that it puts it squarely back where we believe it needs to start, between governments, in order to negotiate what those agreements should look like and what that framework looks like within which national security is protected.
Thank you. I repeat the other question I asked you. You think encryption standards are reliable?
I think the open encryption standards that are now under scrutiny are as reliable as they can be, but they also need to evolve. As I said earlier, encryption standards don't stay reliable forever. So we should always update them. We should always improve them. We should always seek new encryption standards in order to improve security.
Mr. Allan?
Each of those issues. On the encryption side, essentially with security, what you're doing is trying to raise the cost of breaching the security. And encryption certainly does raise that cost. So even with compromises, I mean, the reaction to a compromise or threat of compromise is to go for a stronger encryption system, which typically carries more cost, but also raises the cost for the person trying to break it. And I think Nicholas talked about an arms race earlier. That's exactly what companies like ours are in. And I know we're all looking at new technologies with long terminology that I won't go to here that actually helps us to get to the next stage. I think that'll always be the case. On the debate more generally, I actually think we're on the same side. I mean, there's nobody who works for our companies who's not fundamentally a believer in the values of the connectivity we bring and freedom of expression and an open internet. And we worry about the chilling effect, I think, you know, in a similar way to the way that you do. I mean, these disclosures, these revelations, day after day in the newspaper about our industry are really painful for us, and they're something we do want to challenge quite strongly, because they damage us, they damage the people who use our services, and our users are your citizens are our users. They're indistinguishable in the case of services like ours. Their interests are indistinguishable, and I would hope that we would be working, you know, collectively to try and advance those interests. Just to turn to a couple of the specifics on payments, Facebook, we don't take payment for the government data requests that we receive. Interestingly, some activists have urged us to do so, privacy activists, and their logic is that if you charge governments, then they'll make fewer requests. Which is quite a compelling logic, and we've been kicking that around, but we you know, so far have adopted a policy position that says we won't take payment. But again, we'd be very interested in an open debate with policymakers about whether or not it's worth adding the friction of money in there as some way of rationing the data requests that governments make. A very interesting public policy question. Finally, on the safe harbour question, as an EU citizen, I would much rather do business with a company that's in the safe harbour than do business with one that's not. Because that tells me it's a very strong indicator that company is serious and is thoughtful about data protection. The FTC, as a company that is subject to an FTC order, the FTC is a tough regulatory body, the US Federal Trade Commission. They do regulate us effectively. The national security piece is exempt at the moment, but interestingly, the safe harbour is intended to be two-way, and similarly, national security is exempted in the EU data protection regulation. So you know, it's logical that safe harbour doesn't today include national security because it's including the data protection directive bits, which don't include national security today in the EU side. In future, should you know, the EU-US arrangements be rewritten so they do include national security provisions, well, that appears to be on the table. From our point of view, probably a very sensible step forward. But we understand why safe harbour today doesn't do that, because it's mirroring EU provisions which don't do that.
Thanks. The question is, of course, always national security of which national state exactly, but never mind. Okay, I'm going to take the last the questions of the last three members present here and group them, and then ask the panelists to respond to all the questions, and then we can end by 6:30. So I'm calling in order Mr. Engström, Mr. Torvalds, and Mrs. Ludford. Mr. Engström.
Thank you. I got a question for Mrs. Belz from Microsoft. You mentioned, well, you said several times that you don't have backdoors in your products, and of course I'm very, very happy that you say that. The problem is, of course, that most of your products are closed source, which means there is no way for an outside independent person to verify what is actually running on his or her computer once it's installed. You say that you allow some governments, etc., to read source code, and of course the source code that you let them read, quite obviously there are no backdoors in that source code, but there is no way to, I mean, because it's closed source, there's no way to verify that the code that you showed to somebody is actually what's running. In contrast, I mean, if we're talking about open source software, operating systems like Linux, etc., then the source code is published. Anybody with the expertise can compile it, can compare the binaries. So it's possible to verify open source software, but it's not possible to verify any of your products, I'm afraid. So my question is, if, speaking purely hypothetically, if it were the case that the NSA or some other US agency had ordered you to install backdoors in some or all of your products, would you be allowed to tell us that here now?
That's a funny one. Mr. Torvalds.
Thank you, Sophie. First of all, going back to intercourse, as you probably know, there is a small town in Massachusetts with this interesting name, and I'm suspecting that all the three of you have business there with some organization. And that goes to the different way of asking. My colleague actually almost posed a question when my oldest son was asked the same question, has he been approached by the NSA about backdoors? Then he said no, but at the same time he nodded, because then he was sort of in the legal free. He had given the right answer, and everybody understood that NSA had approached them. And then we have the third question, the third problem. Mrs. Belz said that there are no backdoors, which is not technically actually true, because you have bad programming with backdoors. Because if you have bugs, and you have bugs in your program, and that bug is a backdoor, and you actually give away some money to a certain James Forshaughter finding one backdoor. And we suspect that there are probably hundreds of bug backdoors in Windows programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question for Mrs. Ludford.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Yes, I mean, rather similar to the line that you were pursuing. I mean, we are, of course, dependent on press reports for the allegations of bulk metadata collection through PRISM and Tempora and so on, compared to your presentations here today. And it's really very difficult for us to match up the two. I heard Richard Allan say that there is much that is untrue. I can't remember exact adjective you used, and that may well be the case. But of course, it's impossible for us to ascertain that. But I am slightly intrigued by the wording. At least two of you used the phrase that you permitted no direct or unfettered access to servers. Two of you at least used that. What is the opposite? Is indirect and fettered access. So could anyone tell me what you do allow if you don't allow direct and unfettered access to your servers?
That's intercourse.
Okay, I think those were three very precise questions. Mrs. Belz.
So now I feel as I was in an intelligence test, so let me give it a try. So it's all about trust. That's clear. But I think it's also what we need to take care is that we ground ourselves on facts and on legal requirements. So open source versus proprietary software, a long and heated debate since many years. Look, open source, yes, has the beauty to be open, but it also is open, by the way, to those people who want to develop this software to create some vulnerabilities and use the software to do exactly what you want to avoid. It's not more secure. I would even say there is more higher risk with open source that you have, that unwarranted access is taking place than for what I call controlled software. First. Second, if I'm able to allow, would NSA allow me to answer this question? Look, it's very simple. I can answer the question. There is no backdoor. Full stop. So, I don't need to ask NSA to be able to...
My question was, hypothetically, if there was one, would you be allowed to tell?
If there was one, then I assume that I'm not allowed to be told because it's part of the secret, of the rules which I have to apply not to talk. But I tell you that there is no backdoor. So then it comes to the next interesting question: what is a backdoor? And I think that's requires really some investigation and to make a clarification. For me, a backdoor is that something is built in our software, a hole, a vulnerability, which we give to the NSA that they can use it to get access to data of whomever. So this is not what we are doing. Yes, our software has vulnerabilities, as, by the way, any other software in the world. So our approach is to protect our customers and to close as much as possible those vulnerabilities because, yes, indeed, there are many criminals out who would try to use it and to do harm to our customers. So it is in the heart, in the DNA, and in the core of Microsoft's business to continuously close any vulnerability we have, and we certainly do not hand over any vulnerabilities for other purposes. And by the way, this is a very interesting conversation. If, some governments around the world would consequently use vulnerabilities of a technology in order to get access to data, is this something which, from a political perspective, I cannot answer this, from a political perspective, you want to have this, and isn't this something you want to discuss on an intergovernmental level, if this should be allowed or not? But we are not providing, to make this very crystal clear, we are not providing any of these technical vulnerabilities to give access to allow others to get access to customer data or data of anybody using our technology. So the indirect and the direct and fettered access, so let me answer this. So it's very simple. What we want to, and I think we all kind of have their very clear point of view, we only give access to access to data of our customers which are on our servers if there is a concrete request, the request is legal, and then we do a search of the data. If the data are there, we are collecting them and we're handing them over. That is what we are doing, and we are doing that because... Anymore? Sorry. I'm speaking too long, I'm sorry. So that is exactly what we are doing, and this is what we are obliged to do by law, and we follow and we adhere to laws, not only to the US law, but around the world, and we are getting from everywhere these requests. So indirect and unfettered would be that we say, look, here is our server, dear Secret Service, go, here is the interface, have fun, and check what you want to see. That is what we are not doing, and we can certainly exclude we all, all companies here have been confirming this. The unfortunate situation is that there are allegations out, and we have, very complicated situation which doesn't allow us to defend. But look, I only know the word in German, how you say for this, im Zweifel für den Angeklagten. So as long as there is not really very concrete evidence with the facts that we are doing this, my ask is, hey, let's have a conversation how to overcome the trust situation instead of kind of going into a PAT situation, which does not help you to solve the political problem, which is a political problem, and does not help us because it's a trust problem, which also harms our business.
So Lundblad?
Yes, there's no direct, indirect, fettered or unfettered access. There's only legal government requests that are looked at and scrutinized on a case-by-case basis. I think that is the answer. It means there's no backdoors, and we can say so openly. I think, though, that the question is really valuable because it highlights something that's very important. When we say that, you challenge that. There's no way for us to have an arbiter look at what actually has happened. And I think that whilst we know that we are telling you the truth, that's why we're driving for transparency, for parliamentary oversight, and for security that is only based on judicial authorization. That's the only way that you're going to get to a position or a point at which you're going to be able to say with absolute certainty that we are, in fact, telling you the truth when we are.
In your opinion, do programs like PRISM and Tempora not exist?
We had not heard of any program called PRISM before the news broke.
But of the general description that you read about in the press, I mean, you know, does a program like that ring any bells with you, of that broad general description?
We have not participated in any such program. We have not provided any access.
But are you aware in any sense that that kind of program, or is there no bulk metadata or whatever it is called? I mean, it's above my tech pay grade, quite frankly. But
I am obviously the wrong person to...
Does this kind of thing not exist?
The question is clear.
Yes.
Question is clear.
I think I'm the wrong person to answer that question. It should be addressed to the security agencies around the world.
Okay, Mr. Allan.
I'm just busy doing a status update, so I'm in the same room as Linus Torvalds' dad. I'm really excited. On the question of how we sort of got here, I think people basically put 2 and 2 together and made 25 out of it. And there was an unfortunate, actually, coincidence in the news reporting that there was a report about bulk access to Verizon metadata, I think it was in the United States, that came out just before the revelations from Edward Snowden, and all of that was jumbled up together. So that we are spending time unpicking that. The language that was used, the direct and unfettered, was a reaction by our executives to press reports that used that language. So we didn't choose that language randomly. It was the press was saying, oh my God, there's direct and unfettered access. So we had to say there is not direct and unfettered access to respond to that. I mean, what's interesting, I think what's missing from the puzzle at the moment is it's remarkable to me how little information governments publish on their own requests. I mean, they are doing this in our name, all of us, on our behalf, using lawful authority. It would seem to me that while we as companies, some of us slower than others, have got to a point where we're willing to spend time and money publishing data about how many requests we receive, the people who send those requests, who are public servants paid for by us acting in our name, don't seem to think that they need to publish that information. And really, for any citizen to have a complete picture and know who's telling the truth, they need for us to say what we're receiving, which we've done very clearly today, but also the people who make the requests to say how many requests they've made in our name. And I think we can make progress in that. Then we can get past this bit of, a lot of putting little pieces together and making something that may not be accurate.
Okay, thank you all very much. That brings us to the end of today's session. Thanks to all the panelists for being here and being exposed indeed to our frustration, but it's our job to try and get at the truth somehow. Thanks to everybody present, thanks to the interpreters. The next session of the Inquiry Committee will be on Thursday, the 14th, so that's in 3 days, in the afternoon from 3 to 6:30. Hope to see you there.